Hey, family. What's up, YouTube? Today's topic is following tragedy and death. I'm going to read an article on tragedy and death and the effects it has by producing guilt in different types of forms, survivor's guilt and just guilt. And the reason I'm choosing that as a topic is because after 15 years of substance abuse and partying and just living this wrong lifestyle, um, and I tried to get sober for a while. One of the reasons or one of the life experiences that threw me off track and um, I guess you could say caused me to, or it led me to a choice to relapse back into alcohol and drug use, and that was the death of my dad, the death of my father. And also, when it comes to survivor's guilt, me making my way out of the tragedy of poverty and substance and alcohol abuse and all of that, and to look back and see all the people in my family that didn't escape that tragedy. They're still actively involved in that type of life. And sometimes I feel, I guess I feel, I don't know, kind of guilty about that. Um, but I'm going to go ahead and read this, and hopefully it sheds some light, exposes you to some information that helps you on your journey. So, following tragedy and death. When the death of someone close occurs, even under normal circumstances, guilt is a common reaction at individual points in time. This is true even if the connection with the person was a negative one. Traumatic events can increase a sense of connection to those with whom the event was experienced or with people not well known before the event. Previous interactions may become emotionally more significant, including those with someone who was little known before a traumatic event, who then died in the event. There are always regrets after someone dies. Things said or not said, done or not done. Under normal circumstances, the pattern are the people whom you cared for or loved knew that you cared even if you aggravated each other. The death of someone close amplifies our awareness of the finiteness of our earthly lives and current relationships. Recognizing this is an opportunity to honor the deceased and others who are close to us by valuing life and relationships and behaving accordingly. So, valuing life and relationships and behaving accordingly. Some kinds of guilt, however, are more complex. A sense of guilt may become entangled with other post-trauma issues, such as an amplified sense of connectedness to others with whom the trauma was experienced, and or a disruption of trust and beliefs. I'm going to go over that one again because I didn't really understand it. But so a sense of guilt may become entangled with other post-trauma issues, such as an amplified sense of connectedness to others with whom the trauma was experienced. Okay, um, I get that, I understand that. So what I equate that to sometimes is like when I went through. So basically, this information that I am sharing with you guys is material out of a program that I took that was part of the challenge incarceration program, which was an opportunity that I had when I got sentenced to prison for my fifth drunk driving. This was an opportunity for me to join into this challenge incarceration program, do this 6 month intense inpatient military based type program in order for an early release. And this drunk driving was actually the fifth drunk driving that I got from going into a 2 month drunk after my dad passed away. So going to prison, whether it's challenge incarceration program or whatnot, that's a trauma experience. And being in, so squad 3 was the squad I was in. So this sense of connectedness to others with whom the trauma was experienced. So you feel connected to all the inmates or the people that are in your squad. And so I can kind of relate to what this is saying. I can't explain it very well, but and or a disruption of trust and beliefs. Okay, so traumatic stress shakes up multiple relationships, including with oneself, those closest, and the community. We may re-examine and reassess our sense of meaning and belief, such as the meaning of the event and the experience, issues of trust, connectedness to others, and the goodness and badness of human beings. For example, when so many good people die, survivors may re-examine their own goodness. Trauma or death may intensify guilt. For example, there may be a little guilt or discomfort if a friend asked you to come talk and you did not get there before he or she left town. A war veteran described intense and persistent guilt after he failed to arrive in time to hear the last words of his dear friend who had been urgently asking for him. In other example, following a sniper attack, an elementary school girl's guilt and trauma reactions were intense and persistent because she had accidentally hit with a stray dodgeball a little known peer who later died in the attack. After traumatic events, guilt may be part of an ongoing sense of helplessness and or ineffectualness. Very often, people who have experienced a traumatic event are particularly troubled by the fact that they were unable to exert control over what was happening. At the time of the trauma, there is a quick and immediate sense that one should respond according to one's ordinary standards in certain constructive ways by halting the path of the trauma or evil or by helping other people in a constructive way. Neither of these may be possible during extreme trauma. At the very most, the response that is possible is less than the ideal expectation. The response to this incomplete enactment can be perpetual self-condemnation. Self-condemnation that is related to that lingering failed enactment and to a residual traumatized self that is still to some degree in that state of helplessness. The recovery process involves transcending that traumatized self. So the recovery process from experiencing tragedy, trauma, and death involves transcending that traumatized self. Guilt presupposes the presence of choice and the power to exercise it. Survivor guilt may sometimes be an unconscious attempt to counteract or undo helplessness. The idea that one somehow could have prevented what happened may be more desirable than the frightening notion that events were completely random and senseless. We have personal and cultural expectations of how we should think, feel, and behave. Among our values are striving to overcome adversity, to protect others, and to find a way through obstacles. When passengers on a flight that crashed in Pennsylvania on September 11th observed these values, they protected some of the rest of us. During many traumatic situations, however, putting these values into practice is impossible or limited. When the events are over, it may only be possible to do so with varying lengths of intensive therapeutic work. Following traumatic events, an individual may experience real guilt for acts of commission or omission that resulted in the physical or emotional endangerment or harm of others. Imagined guilt includes imagined guilt, and then it says e.g. survivor guilt, guilt with an element of wishful thinking about one's ability to act. So imagined guilt includes the types of guilt that occur in the absence of having acted harmfully. Both types of guilt include self-condemnation, and either can result in harm to self or others, e.g., punishing acts to self or others, the action of elicitation or rejection, disdain, and or punishment. Following traumatic events, guilt may be a complicated part of traumatic response. It is among the symptoms associated with more pronounced traumatic reactions. Guilt may intensify or complicate trauma and or grief reactions. It also may result in hopelessness, depression, and other problems such as self-harm, suicidal feelings, and substance abuse. Resolution and acting in the best interest of both the guilt-ridden and the offended may require the help of a skilled individual, a therapist, a clergy, or in some cases, a wise friend. Unresolved guilt, whether for actual or perceived offenses, can result in a multitude of problems, including mental health difficulties, negative responses from others, and disrupted relationships. Guilt can immobilize. It can hinder or prevent well-being, trauma recovery, a normal progression through life, productive action, and positive relationships. Recognized or unrecognized guilt can undermine relationships over prolonged periods or affect the kinds of relationships a person attracts to him or herself. It can keep the guilt-ridden individual stuck in suffering, depression, and or self-recrimination. The attitude and demeanor of guilt may elicit reactions from others such as, I'm not sure what this word is, but it's spelled I-R-E, so ire or ire, such as ire, punishment, or victimization. Guilt can punish more than the guilty. It colors interactions and the quality of life for the guilt-ridden and for those whose lives are affected by their moods and behaviors and by the level of their support, goal setting, and productivity. Like anger, guilt at its best is a mobilizer toward productive action. Staying focused on guilt rather than acting positively and toward resolution can be a way of avoiding facing other issues and emotions. For example, guilt can serve to keep an individual focused on a particular time period, such as the period before something horrible happened. It may give a false sense of control, a sense that the person was able to do something to prevent the harm. If only I had dot dot dot. Guilt may prevent someone from facing their key issues or intense emotions, and in that sense, may serve as an unrecognized method of avoidance. Unresolved guilt impedes recovery and produces difficulties for more than the guilty. A little bit more over a page here. This is about survivor guilt, roadblock and destroyer of recovery by Colleen Crary. Okay, so survival guilt is considered to be an associated feature of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. One begins to experience strong feelings of guilt for having lived through the event when others did not survive. Survivor guilt may result in self-condemnation or self-punishment as well as severe depression. Survivor guilt is recognized as a symptom of PTSD. Survivor guilt presents a major roadblock to recovery. Just when the individual with PTSD begins to make a great stride in recovery and rejoin the rest of society, or when a successful achievement is attained, a crushing feeling of guilt can overwhelm, ruining that moment of success and achievement. The individual is beset with panic attacks, sudden deep depression, and feelings of tremendous guilt and self-loathing. This can send the individual right back to square one. Why does this happen? When one achieves a great milestone in life or recovery, they should feel pride in self and a sense of achievement. In PTSD, the traumatic memories can rise up at this emotional moment. The individual feels, wow, I did it. I have come so far and have been successful. This is a moment to look back and assess where one has been and how far one has come. For the person with PTSD, looking back includes remembering the traumatic events that changed them forever. This includes remembering those people who didn't survive the event, who didn't make it out of the same traumatized life that you made it out of. Those who lost their lives, my dad, my brother, those who never recovered, most of the people that are still actively using in my immediate family, not immediate, but biological family. When survivor guilt sets in, one may begin regressing in behavior, sabotaging their success by behaving in an antisocial or irresponsible, self-destructive manner. It is at this point that the person with PTSD must be stronger than ever before and rejoin therapy to ride out the guilt while keeping one's achievements and success intact. Okay, the would have, should have, could have trap of survivor guilt. Survivor guilt is often experienced by those who have survived an event that involved one or more people, usually close friends or loved ones. It is common to feel guilty about having survived when others died. These feelings may be worse if someone died while rescuing you, or if you were unable to help someone else. Some people experience survivor guilt even if they were nowhere near the disaster zone. For example, some individuals have stated that they were scheduled to fly on September 11th of 2001, but their plans changed for one reason or another. Some of those people have discussed feeling survivor guilt because they should have been on a plane that day. Symptoms of survivor guilt are similar to those of other anxiety disorders, as well as depression. Flashbacks, nightmares, loss of motivation, and obsessing about the event are common. Some people are able to overcome survivor guilt on their own or with the help of supportive friends and family. If symptoms worsen or fail to improve, however, professional treatment is recommended with a therapist who specializes in trauma treatment. Without treatment, survivor guilt may lead to self-medicating, alcohol or drugs, regression in recovery, and other self-defeating behaviors. So yeah, a little bit on tragedy and death, trauma, guilt, survivor guilt, depression, regression, recovery. Lot going on in that little article. I hope it brought to light some new information that can help you make it through what you're going through. And I'm going to go ahead and get into the last part of this video. I'm going to read nightly journal entry, guys. Yeah, so if you've been watching my videos, you know what it is. If you don't know what it is, go back and watch a few of my videos. Start from the beginning. There's many videos out there, and you'll catch on pretty quick. So we're on the journal entry for November 8th, 2011. A little less than 14 years ago when I was in the program that I got all this material from that I chose to use as my content to help people get better, share my experiences, expose you to the things that I was exposed to in hopes that it helps somebody. What was positive and what was negative about today? Positive for the day were the time away from the center today to go on work crew and some interesting feedback in my AOA. Nope, I read that one already. All right, yeah, so it's November 9th. I got to put an X by that